Oh, that submarine's so fake. Look, you can see the strings. An octopus! What?
CGI has advanced incredibly over the years, but there are still times when special effect artists miss mistakes. Or, in the case of Cats, the whole movie gets replaced with incomplete CGI. Either way, a lot of these mistakes aren't even caught the first time by viewers and require a good eye to spot them. Once you do spot each mistake, it's pretty hard not to see them every time you rewatch the movie. In the case of Cats, you have to question why you'd even be watching the movie a second time. See how CG characters just disappeared from cars, Thanos messed up his Infinity Gauntlet, and how one of the highest grossing movies of all time had a major CGI blunder.
Who's in charge of continuity on this picture?
Avengers Endgame was a marvelous CG treat. The effects were so impressive, the movie was even nominated for an Academy Award. But among the hundreds and hundreds of CGI shots and digital effects, there was one tiny blunder people picked on months after the film's release. During the final battle with the 2014 Thanos, the Mad Titan gets a hold of the gauntlet and is about to snap his fingers. Let's take a look.
I am inevitable.
Did you spot the mistake?
No.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to tell unless you actually know what's there. On the ring finger of Thanos, you can see some clipping where the gauntlet moves into the palm. Yep, right there. We're not nitpicking or complaining, really. It's actually a marvel that these Marvel movies had so little mistakes considering how much needed to get done to pull off this last battle. With a movie like Cats, we're not even sure what the cats are actually supposed to look like. They are like human-feline hybrids with strange sizes, human-ish hands, and bizarre-looking faces. The whole movie could be considered a CGI disaster. Oddly, Hooper was making effect changes right up until the movie premiered, and theaters got updated versions of the movie a week after it debuted. Yikes. Well, one of the more glaring errors found in the film comes from Judi Dench's role as Old Deuteronomy. In the movie, we get a good look at her hands and fur during Gus's theater cat song. You clearly see the fur transition up to the hand. Well, during the song The Addressing of Cats near the end of the movie, if you look at Dench's hand, you will notice that the fur isn't there, and you can even see her wearing her own wedding ring. The blunder is extremely obvious, but gives viewers something to focus on besides some of the other creepy animations featured in it. Cats really should have been delayed a few months to clean up this litter box full of mistakes and errors. Back in 2009, Avatar changed the game when it came to digital effects, motion capture, and bringing realistic CGI to life. We got to witness some amazing CGI sequences, people wish they lived in Pandora, and James Cameron once again changed the landscape of movies. While everything holds up fairly well, there's some elements of Avatar that stand out in a bad way. We know the Na'vi are much larger than humans, but pulling off the effective scale was probably a bit of a challenge, especially when the Na'vi and humans are in the same scenes together. For example, take the scene where Neytiri goes to rescue the human form of Jake and sees him this way for the first time. Her hand could smother his whole head. But watch when he reaches up and goes to touch her face. All of a sudden, their hands are pretty much the same size, and Jake's actually looks a little bigger in some of the close-ups. We all know what they say about a guy with big hands. But come on, this was way too disproportionate to what sizes the Na'vi are supposed to be. When you have big budgets for films like Endgame or Avatar, mistakes should be avoided. But we do hold a little forgiveness for low-budget films like the Justin Timberlake sci-fi movie In Time. During the movie, Timberlake drives a convertible with Amanda Seyfried. The budget obviously wasn't large enough for a full-blown crash, so the filmmakers did the best they could, and the end result wasn't so great. The car itself looks like a Hot Wheels falling down a pile of sand at the beach. The physics of the car flip and the fall are bizarre. And if you're wondering how two characters could survive a car flip in a convertible, well, they weren't actually there for the flip. The digital models inside the car pretty much disappear for the duration of the crash, so all we see is an empty car flipping down the hill. The more you watch the crash, the harder it is to process what's even happening. The crash stands out so much that they would have been better off just playing sound effects and showing a bystander's reaction rather than the car flipping down the hill at all. The Watchmen movie was an ambitious effort to bring the eccentric DC anti-heroes to life on the big screen. One of the biggest CG effects for the film was Dr. Manhattan. The glowing blue guy needed to be all CGI, and Billy Crudup wore a motion capture suit to pull off the impressive performance. All is well and good in the scenes until you spot a key reflection in the goggles of Night Owl 2. During some of the climactic moments of the movie, we see Dr. Manhattan and Night Owl in a scene together. Watch closely in Night Owl's goggles. Right there. If you look closely, you will spot a glowing blue character, but it's not the finished effects of Dr. Manhattan. It's actually Billy Crudup in his motion capture suit. The main way you can tell is by the spots of blue missing near his neck and upper body. To the naked eye, it looks like a regular reflection, but when you pause the movie or watch the scene multiple times, the motion capture suit becomes pretty obvious. The mistake also happens multiple times within the same scene. Just keep watching whenever Night Owl gets shown. A small blunder, but pretty noticeable the more you watch. The Hobbit prequel was an ambitious effort too, especially as it turned a single book into 3 movies. But even more effort was putting into creating the CGI effects for some of the biggest scenes. One of the hardest scenes to pull off must have been the massive battle between the elves and the dwarves. To create the huge army of elven warriors, a lot of CGI magic was put into place. But during some of the close-ups, the magic kind of disappears. When you're not distracted by the white, long locks of the pretty princess, the Elven King, take a look at some of his warriors. Many of them actually have the same face and mannerisms. Makes you wonder if you're watching The Hobbit or Star Wars Episode 2: The Clone Wars. With so many advancements in CGI, the movie could have at least changed up the faces a little bit. The whole segment reminds us of the first Toy Story, when all of Andy's friends in his birthday party are actually just clones of Andy. And that was a movie released nearly 20 years earlier. A small film like 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri clearly doesn't have the full-scale budget to feature CGI, but one of the scenes felt like a stock footage 101. Take a look at this scene and tell us if you can spot the painfully obvious animation. No, they didn't de-age Frances McDormand. It's the deer. The first shot of the deer features a pretty overcast sky, and yet the deer is fully lit. The next angle showcases the sun behind the deer, but the deer itself is evenly lit from the front. It looks like a green screen cut and paste job that we could have done during a basic After Effects tutorial. Even the deer's feet look like it's barely touching the ground, almost floating there and hovering over the lawn. Getting a real deer to stand there for the scene was obviously too much of an issue, but maybe the scene would have been better off if they chose another animal, maybe a cow or a bunny. Anything to eliminate this painfully distracting scene from what is otherwise a very compelling movie. Why did it take Venom so long to get a solo movie? Well, just check out the effects in Spider-Man 3. Some of them work well, while those sharp teeth and transformations, not so much. So in 2018, Sony had the chance to do things right, and the Venom CG was pretty impressive. Symbiote was flying all over the screen, but just 4 minutes into the movie, there was a glaring mistake that could be really distracting. During an early scene, an ambulance gets taken over by a symbiote and crashes on a barren road. The quick shots showcase the crash pretty well, right up until the very last moment. In the scene, we see the ambulance rolling on the road only to have an extra random flip and a sudden stop out of nowhere. After the extra flip, all momentum from the ambulance ends, creating a very unnatural look. Adding to that, the symbiote escapes the roof of the vehicle the instant that it stops. Everything fits all too perfectly in the little box, creating a weird blend of CGI effects that just doesn't look quite realistic enough. Literally just 1 more second of the ambulance sliding or an extra flip would have made all the difference here. Ready Player One was a CG fest filled with so many Easter eggs and visual moments, it would be pretty hard to spot any mistakes. But we did notice one. Around 15 minutes into the movie, we learn about the race to find the first key in the Oasis digital world. The race itself ends when King Kong jumps off the Empire State Building and causes major havoc to any cars still left in the running. Parzival is so close to the finish line, which we get a good glimpse of in the scene. Well, flash forward a little bit later when he figures out how to win the race by going backwards. He goes through the whole track until a ramp unveils his track to the finish line. Only the second time, the visuals have changed a little. It's still Central Park, but there's no railroads across the entrance and the landscaping has changed a bit as well. Considering how the track always seems to have the same path and obstacles, you cannot write this off as an Oasis change and upgrade. The differences are pretty obvious, and the entry walkway is much longer for the second race. As far as animal destruction movies go, Rampage is a pretty good time. The animal CGI wasn't the greatest, but provided enough entertainment for this popcorn film. The one blunder here actually has nothing to do with the animals. We're focused on The Rock here. Near the climax of the movie, Dwayne Johnson's character must parachute out of an airplane, but it's pretty clear that he's not the one parachuting at all. Johnson's face gets CGI'd onto the stunt performer, and things turn out a little wacky. Watch in real time and see if you can notice anything weird. Okay, now let's slow things down a bit. What is happening to his face? His cheek warps out like he's transforming into Angelina Jolie's Maleficent, and his nose becomes all distorted as well. They were probably better off sticking to wide shots on this one. The Rock's nose flattens like he's just been clobbered with a steel chair.
Oh! Did you hear that?
Yikes. Guess all of the budget went into the big animals instead.
The stuff that we're doing, it's not working for me.
Whew, there were a lot of glaring mistakes there. Which ones were the most painfully obvious? Any great ones we missed? Did you notice the clipping in Endgame? Do these mistakes distract you from the movie? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Screenrant for more great content.